Hello and welcome to the Large and Unnecessary First Player Token Podcast, episode 67. I'm Euan.
I'm Chris.
I'm impressed. This was expertly done.
Well, I've been listening to him do it often enough. A bit of a switch up today because Chris has got a thumping heat on him and he's just dying a little bit inside, so he doesn't want to speak as much.
It's not drink related, but my throat is kind of suffering at the moment.
I can vouch for him. He's not been sitting in his room drinking whiskey all night.
Unfortunately, in Scotland, when somebody says they don't feel well, excuses and explanations that it's not alcohol related is a must.
Well, it's worth making the distinction.
It's a badge of honour though if it is alcohol related in Scotland.
Right,
so well done, son. Well done.
Aye.
Regretfully, Chris is not hanged over.
Yeah. You could be sinking a ship or something like that, and it would just be like, "Oh, you're a naughty laddie, son." But anyway, we're here to talk about video games, not our alcohol problems as a nation.
Might be an idea for a spin-off.
Possibly, but I think we've got enough spin-offs to be working on at this point. Let's not add an alcoholism one to it as well. So yeah, it's going to be probably a slightly shorter, very bitty episode. We've kind of, our video game intake's been a bit sporadic and all over the place. I personally have still been stuck in a kind of 90s days playing the original Fallout and Command and Conquer games, which I've been enjoying immensely. Fallout still is floating my boat.
How far through it are you now?
I've basically been to most places. There's a couple of towns I've not been to. I've now been to the Boneyard, where you can. There's some interesting storylines going on there. Where you first there's like a town that's kind of. It's basically the remnants of LA.
Yeah.
And there's multiple places you can go to, and there's like a slightly more civilized, well guarded town, but there's some shadiness to do with the setup there, and then there's this gang that the people in the town don't like, but there's reasons for it all, and it's interesting because you can kind of take things on face value and go and just do whatever mission you're given, but if you chat to people a bit more and you find out about what's going on and find out about like the reasons behind a lot of it, like the corruption of it all, it gets a bit more interesting, and you kind of. I'm enjoying the multiple ways you can take these quests. It can get a bit frustrating at times because it's not as streamlined as sort of the more modern takes on the game. So you can get yourself a wee bit stuck quite easily, and like finding out how to kind of almost like trigger missions. Where you need to go, who you need to speak to, can be a bit frustrating. You're back and forth in a lot of towns quite a lot.
A classic 90s game thing.
Yeah, and it's the thing you like
not knowing what to do next.
Aye. But it's like I feel comfortable with that. It's like I know how this works. I'm used to that, so I will go through it. But it can grate a little bit and that's usually the point when I'll sort of come away from the game. So I need to stop and come back and rethink this. But yes, I've also been playing Command and Conquer and Red Alert as I mentioned a couple of weeks ago. We were talking about FMV videos which were the wave of the future back in the day. I remember there was a whole series of there was the Super Nintendo bazooka light gun thing that had like a whole game based around that.
I think I had that.
Aye.
Or did I have a loan of it? I can't remember.
Possibly.
I definitely had it in my bedroom when I was a kid
stupid.
at some point. It was ridiculous. Right.
But I've actually been really enjoying the way that the Command and Conquer. Like there's a real like tongue in cheek sensibility on the videos. They've like clearly had a right laugh making them. And the first Command and Conquer, you've got like the GDI and Nod and like Kane being this kind of representation of like this weird sort of terroristy cult, are the sort of the bad guys in it. And I was watching that, and it's like there's amazing like the parallels with today. And they basically he manipulates the media to get his own way, and it actually it impacts the campaign. If you play as the GDI at one point, your funding gets cut by the UN, and you have to like scrape through a mission with no funding. It's really difficult because he puts out all these propaganda videos saying that like the GDI's been like bombing sort of civilian villages and killing people and all this sort of stuff. So it's quite interesting, the sort of the analogues with today, how the kind of how they've been manipulating the media to get their own way.
Command and Conquer was ahead of its time.
Oh, totally was, yeah. I mean, the thing is, the villains in it are still ridiculous and cartoonish, so what they're doing doesn't quite make sense, because anyone with half a brain will look at it and go, this is like an obvious cult. But, I guess that's how these things happen. They get control of the media. But, yeah, I've also been playing Red Alert, and I've been enjoying the step up in that, of like the mission design, and the kind of the use of, because like the real-time strategy thing back in the day, it was quite a limited format, really. Just like, select your guys, send them over there to shoot at each other, and one of them wins. It's a bit kind of arbitrary, but they do quite a lot with that in Red Alert, and they'll sort of, a mission might take place over stages, and even still using the sort of the base mechanic where you're having to set up a base and try and like control that area, control the resources, but also then trying to take another area. So you actually have the option to expand your base, or use just get rid of your old base and move it somewhere else. And like using sort of units, things like you were talking about the spies.
Yes.
There's a really great spy mission in the Allied campaign that I'm sort of in the middle of, and I've actually replayed a couple of times because I just enjoyed it that much. It's like really, you go and you have to like go and get your spy into one building, then it gets it in another one.
Some of those spy missions were brilliant. And, like when I think about like Red Alert and stuff, those are the ones that stick out in my head. Were the spy missions. I just remember like the first time that I ever had to play one of the spy missions, and you only had that spy, and you started the mission with just him, and you were kind of like, oh well, this is different.
Yeah,
like this is an interesting spin on what's going on here. You have to find your base, I believe, didn't you?
There's a couple of ones. There's like I think there's one with the Russians where you're having to find the spy, and then there's another one where you're having to rescue Tanya as the Allied spy, because Tanya's like a main character, and this is a really brutal. We were talking about the videos. There's like a really brutal torture series of like cutscenes around that mission, and I was like, they could have like really played this for like camp value, but they seem to have also gone for like a certain element of realism in it. It was. Yeah, I was quite disturbed by those.
Have you seen any good Tim Curry videos?
No, well, Tim Curry isn't. They haven't landed the talent that I think it's in Red Alert 2 or 3 that they start getting in. It's when Malcolm McDowell starts turning up and stuff. It's like legitimate. Because Malcolm McDowell's gone to his agent. I want $10,000 for one day's work, please, and he gets it every time. Because nobody says no to Malcolm McDowell.
He popped up in some weird places in the mid-90s.
Oh yeah. Tank Girl.
Tank Girl. One of the Star Trek films.
Oh yeah, aye. He's got like a fairly major.
He was a major villain in it. He was pretty good.
Aye, he's always enjoyable to watch. And if he can do more video games, all the better. I think there should be a Malcolm McDowell simulator. But it's just you berating your agent.
Don't make me laugh, man.
Sorry, yeah. Chris is really. I'm watching. I'm sitting here. I don't know how to react because every time I look over, I just see Chris suffering.
Yeah, well, it's mainly I'm trying to keep a straight face because I don't want to laugh. Like it's because it makes my throat tickly and it makes me cough.
Well. Hopefully we can aid you in that by moving on.
Oh, that was good.
Yeah,
good transition.
To speak to Pawel. I don't know how much you're going to be able to contain your laughter.
When Pawel starts speaking.
Aye.
Oh, well, that's going to be very difficult.
We'll see.
Well-known comedian is Pawel.
Am I?
It does tend to trigger you.
Well,
It triggers
That's
everybody.
a different thing, though.
I think it's the other way around. I'm the one to be triggered, I've noticed.
Okay, trigger warning. Pawel is now about to speak.
Oh yes.
I'm about to speak. Let's speak about something trigger-worthy.
What have you been up to, Pawel?
I have been up to Total War, Warhammer to be more precise. And we've spoken about Total War Warhammer some time ago. I'm gonna say,
Total War games quite a lot, actually, I think.
well, yeah, because it's obviously quite a massive franchise full of rather big games, but most of them are now a distant past, whereas Warhammer is the current present.
Yeah, I liked those games before. It was cool.
Oh, there you
I just
go.
wanna
You
put
like
that out
Shogun,
there.
did you?
I think
Yeah.
everybody liked
I had
Shogun.
Shogun, I had Rome,
Yeah.
I had Medieval. The originals, None of these sequels.
Ah, kids these days.
Yeah, kids these days. They don't know, man. They don't know.
Chris really getting into some PC game gatekeeping, right?
Right, so I'm gonna now proceed
I'm very
to
protective of the original Fallout.
trigger the old man Chris. So here we go. So I think that the Total War Warhammer, especially since the very recent updates and releases, is reaching the peak of what Total War as such can and should have achieved a long time ago. And as much as all the old classics laid the foundations for this greatness, the current iteration of Total War Warhammer is getting there. With the amount of factions available, variety and depth of gameplay that no previous Total War game has really reached or even scratched.
Well, I mean, before you go any further, is that just because they could really take artistic license with it? Because like you can't really do that when you're doing a historical war game. You can't just
That's Chris
Yeah.
being defensive and
some-
saying, well,
No,
history
no.
is more boring than fantasy.
Well,
Here's
that's
some
like-
Roman archers who are armed with magical items. You can't do that.
It's very true. If you get 16 Germanic tribes, they may have different colors to their shields, but other than that, they
Yeah, they're
mostly,
still Germanic
as far as
tribes.
tactics go, they mostly just move forward and maybe hurl some stones. So yeah, one of the reasons would be Total War was suddenly given, or I suppose purchased, the rights to, maybe do some flying units and magic and all sorts of things like this. And there's going to be a huge difference between how magically animated skeletons behave on the battlefield and how do, I don't know, knights flying on griffins. And tactics aside, similarly, you're going to govern your empire differently if you're a lizard man guided by an ancient race of world-protecting, I don't know what, aliens, I think, or if you're a goblin that just wants to wah, which is what goblins and greenskins want. So yes, this would be one of the reasons. But also, if you take all those past games and the experience that comes with them, how to do things, how to diversify things, and just add on top of everything, it just seems to fit well in Warhammer Total War, because it's not just those two stages nowadays with you governing your empire as such and spreading it through conquest or sometimes maybe politics. And then the other stage being tactical combat, which is what Total War has obviously ever been famous for. But it's nowadays all sorts of quests and missions and your character or various characters' development as such, all sorts of skills and weaponry. It does have some bits of RPG in it as well. So there's just a lot of varied content in it now, yeah? And the major bone everybody for many years now has had with Total War, especially since sort of Rome 2 and Attila and things like this, was that no matter what you buy, you don't get a finished product, and then you just go for your DLCs. And with Warhammer, it's certainly been sort of this way, where the original Total War Warhammer released with 4 factions. But it's been a long time since then, and at its current state, Warhammer has a shitload of factions. It's actually difficult to count them, given that within a faction you're usually going to have at least 2 different what they called legendary lords, and every lord has got its own sort of goals, starting armies and strengths as such, because characters themselves, given that again this is a fantasy setting, characters are very important. They not just pawns leading your actual armies that do the fighting. Characters themselves do quite a lot of fighting. A single character can easily take upon an entire unit in combat, and sometimes even more than one unit. So depending on which legendary lord you pick, your gameplay will look quite different.
So these additional factions are available as separate, like DLC paid content.
Well, Warhammer Total War is now sort of a trilogy. So it's all started with Total War Warhammer, which released the Empire, Vampire Lords, Dwarves, and the fourth faction, which Greenskins, I believe. And then the whole drama with whatever prepaid or pre-order DLC Chaos Warriors. And then they started releasing additional stuff on top of it, filling in holes in the unit rosters, adding additional legendary lords for these 5 factions. Eventually there were more factions, so you get your Wood Elves and various other tree monsters, you get your Norskins, you get your Bretonia, all sorts of factions you'd know from Warhammer franchise as such. Then you get your Warhammer 2, which got released maybe a couple months ago, which doesn't take place in the old world. It takes place on a different continent, where you get your High Elves, your Dark Elves, your Skaven, or Skaven, I have no clue how to actually pronounce it, thank you, and your Lizard Men. So 2 different games with their own campaigns. In the old world, you're mostly just sort of focusing on surviving the upcoming apocalypse and the unleashing of Lords of Chaos, blah blah blah. And then with some of the DLCs, you got smaller campaigns. So if you play as Wood Elves, you may have your own actual campaign. If you play as Beastmen, another faction released for Warhammer 1, you're gonna have your own campaign. Then you get a separate campaign when you play Warhammer 2, which is all sort of related to the huge magic vortex, which is the center of all things in the other continent.
See, I think a moment ago you were assuming a certain familiarity on my part with the with Warhammer lore.
Yeah,
I mean, what I was struggling to get my head around. So there's like an apocalypse coming, so everybody's just going to go off and have wee fights.
Well, that's the thing. Your main campaign is there is apocalypse coming, yeah?
Right.
That's what Warhammer's always been about.
Okay.
But this is the old world, the empire as such and surrounding lands, but the world being much bigger and owing its existence to the actual miniature war game rather than anything else, obviously has factions in other places as well. And in Ulthuan, it's a different atmosphere. I suppose, apocalypse is coming as well, but not in the form of chaos warriors and very strange cults. It's just a different civilization there, yeah?
Okay.
So what happened, I think, yesterday, actually, was the much awaited for release of Warhammer Mortal Empires, which is a massive sort of just free-for-all campaign where you get all these factions released for any of those Total War Warhammer games together, all the continents sort of together, and just, there might be some chaos invasions, but you have your entire world, any faction you want, go ahead and play. And
so is that like more sandboxy?
You still get your faction goals as such. Every faction will, I suppose, or every even legendary lord maybe has their own goals for victory, but they mostly just spread far enough to consider yourself a victor. So it is a little bit more sandboxy. There's supposed to be Warhammer, the third Warhammer game in this trilogy sometime in the future. I don't think anybody really knows what's going to be in it, because
Well, I think people are only just kind of dealing with the fact that the second one's now out.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, it's less than a year since the first one came out.
Yeah.
It's kind of it's really strange. This is something that's kind of new to me.
Yeah, it's an interesting
releasing a trilogy like that,
strategy,
but is it essentially just the same game though? Like they haven't really changed much of the mechanics.
Total War
in that.
2 is there is some advancements in regards to I suppose engine, but not that much. There is some balance, potentially issues between 1 and 2, so now with the release of Mortal Empires, they have to rebalance some of the older factions in order to make sure that everything plays well against each other. But other than that, it's still essentially Total War Warhammer, whether it's Warhammer 1, Warhammer 2, or Mortal Empires, doesn't really matter that much. It's the same game, everything in it stays the same. But there's just so much stuff in it now. I've no clue what else they could add. There's some minor factions maybe somewhere there, and some added variety. But there's already so much in it that I think any Total War fan would be quite pleased. And all the there used to be a lot of naysayers, and I suppose they might still be there. Because Total War used to be quite plagued by negative reviews and negative ratings, or very, very mediocre ratings, because of, pay us some more money for 2 additional tribes that maybe can shoot arrows from horseback. Which is what we used to get in Total War Rome and Attila and things like this. But you get on top of these fans now all hosts of Warhammer fans who are just happy, and quite a lot of I'm gonna say old-time Total War fans are just quite impressed with how much you can do. And as you can play, I don't know how many Shogun games, and Shogun or Shogun 2 are fantastic games, but any siege you do, usually it looks the same way, and then you start playing Total War Warhammer, and suddenly you realize there's no need to really build your ram or your whatever towers and ladders if you've got flying units and you're just gonna fly over the walls, and so many tactical opportunities and ideas, so much mess you can make on those battlefields. It's brilliant.
Sounds like a win-win for everybody.
It seems to
Warhammer
be.
fans,
It's a proper success, I think. And
so you're saying that the long-running and beloved series Total War has really only just now come into its own and become what it's meant to be now that they've done a deal with the Dark Elves of Games Workshop.
This is how I wanted to word it, so that I could trigger Chris a little bit, but he's just dying over there. So
his voice is too buggered to really even react to that.
At the moment, I'm just remaining neutral. I mean, yes, okay. I hate to say it, but I've been really tempted to buy this game because I'm loath to give Games Workshop any money, but I suppose they've already got their money, so.
Their video game output's generally been pretty good. Well,
yes,
I mean, it's because it's not them really that's making it; it's licensed. But
I actually say, I kind of like the world that they built. Okay, the Games Workshop, when you go into their actual business model and all that sort of thing, if we can remove all that from the equation, then okay, it's cool. The stuff that they've done, and I think the Total War system is brilliant. I've loved all the Total War games I've played. In particular, I spent a lot of time playing Rome. Really enjoyed that one, and I have been really tempted to get the Warhammer one, because I think it I mean, just imagining it in my head, because I've never played it before, I've never seen any gameplay, but just imagining it in my head, that would work really well for Warhammer setting. I'm actually I've got a page open here that's talking about Warhammer 2, and I had a little chuckle to myself when I read about the different races and what happens if they win the campaign in Warhammer 2. Do you know much about
I've not done a lot of winning in this game because it takes a whole lot of time, and I keep switching factions, and as soon as I'm sort of dominating the campaign for 100 rounds, I just switch to another faction because they're so different.
Yeah.
Is this
I'm just getting a chuckle. Yeah, well, I mean, I don't know if it's a spoiler, but I think it's one of these things. It's just once the campaign ends, here's what happens. It's just a few statements here. If you don't want to know, don't listen to the next bit. But this is just from the Wikipedia page. If the High Elves win the campaign, they stabilise the vortex. That makes sense. So this is taking place over their home continent, isn't it?
Ulthuan, as
Ulthuan,
such, is a sort of archipelago of islands, and the magical vortex keeps most of the winds of magic sort of bound. So all the demonic assaults, I suppose, on the old world is just a tiny offshoot of what could be happening if the vortex wasn't there.
Yeah. So, should the lizard men win, they stabilise the vortex and become its new guardians. That kind of makes sense for the lizard men. That's the kind of thing they would do.
Yeah.
Like, we protect this now.
Yeah. They're the protectors of the world, actually.
Is that the whole point of the lizard men, or is it just that they didn't have a purpose before?
No,
and they're like, hey, this is something we can do.
They're basically like the Aztecs of the Warhammer world.
But they just followed the old prophecies. So essentially, like the orders or guidelines left by the very, very ancient masters, the Slan, who nobody knows.
I stopped playing the Warhammer tabletop game just before the lizard men came into the beginning of the whole thing, and I was kind of annoyed about that because I thought they were cool as fuck.
It's a brilliant faction.
But I was done with giving Games Workshop money after that.
Okay.
Anyway, should the Dark Elves win, their leader takes over Ulthuan and becomes a god.
Because he's sort of son of the god already, and he's worshipped by his entire faction.
But this is the one that interests me the most, though, and this is probably the race that I would play as.
Because everybody was waiting for this faction so long.
Not the Dark Elves, but the
next
one.
I know which one you're going to say.
Should the Skaven win, the Horned Rat is summoned, and the Skaven conquer the world.
Yeah!
Horned Rat is summoned. Amazing.
Which everybody knows has to happen eventually on Warhammer.
And the Skaven was, again, it was a race that when I played the tabletop game, I never really came across. Like, I didn't know anybody that collected it or anything like that. But the thing that got me into Skaven was playing a very early Games Workshop Warhammer game on PC, Shadow of the Horned Rat.
Oh yes, a classic.
Which was fucking nails.
Oh yeah.
It was so hard, but you were constantly fighting Skaven in it. And they were really annoying, but at the same time I was kind of sitting there going, I wish I was the Skaven in this situation and not the fucking, not the shitty humans that I am.
That's like everybody I knew always either played like orcs or elves
chaos.
or humans.
Yeah,
that's basically it. Like.
Can I play Space Marines?
Well, that's the thing, out of all Games Workshop, I think I only ever played at length like one original Warhammer game, and like I played bits and pieces of all the other ones, but it was the Warhammer one that actually stuck in my head. Even though that's the setting I wouldn't not naturally go for, I think I did quite enjoy what I saw of it, what I played of it.
I never really played 40k very much, but I wouldn't. I was much more interested in the Warhammer game than I was 40k.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I've got a bit of a follow-up question for all this, so Pawel. So we're talking about like different armies winning the game, different civilizations, whatever, winning the game. Is there any sort of like alliance here, or like if the lizard men come up against the high elves, will they just fight each other? Not
necessarily. There is politics, there is diplomacy in this game, and depending on how your campaign goes, various alliances can form or break. The alliances themselves can be shallow, deeper, or they can even form, especially nowadays in the current form of this game, they can become confederations, where essentially you just you just join with another faction, and you have all the provinces and armies. You essentially become one faction. It is possible to play this game in such a way, it's just very difficult, but it's possible to play this game in such a way that you could get traditionally mortal enemies to actually be good friends. I'm not sure if you can actually become a confederation, as in, let's say, or as Greenskins and the Empire, or Greenskins and the Dwarves. That would be an abomination. You can, if you really try, be good friends. You would have to probably focus on just that and nothing else, because all these factions are sort of rigged to maybe behave in a special way. Some factions will naturally have a better predisposition towards you, whereas if you're a vampire, then maybe a faction that's a human faction, but still a faction that's distrustful to Altdorf, is actually quite keen to be your vassal. Just protect protect them and maybe suck their blood from time to time. But other than that, at least you don't have to pay your taxes.
So we're getting into your role-playing games here again, so let's keep that out of it, Pawel, please.
Okay then.
Euan, it's time to move.
Is it time to move on?
Yeah, it's
right?
time
I
to
think
move on before
the
Pawel
vampires
gets
have
started.
come
I'm
out.
just
So
starting here.
you've done pretty well there, Pawel.
Thank
you
you.
succinctly
I'm
described the
very
game.
pleased with the game.
So yeah. Well, we're glad to hear that. Chris, why don't you enlighten us about your continued playing of Fortnite?
Well, yeah, okay, I can talk about Fortnite first, because I have been like just dabbling with games over the past couple of weeks. I've not really, other than Fortnite, I've not really put solid amounts of time into any one game. Well, actually, that's a lie. I have done in Shadow of War, but this feels like I haven't. I'll talk about Fortnite first. So there has been just the past couple of days like a big update to Fortnite, including the Battle Royale mode, which is like, and they've not really added much into the game in terms of like stuff, like, but they have done a lot of sort of cosmetic changes to the game and stuff, to both the original game and the Battle Royale mode, and it's mainly just like I think they're starting to make the game sort of start to look like the way they want it to when it goes into full release, because this game is still early access and you still pay money for it, and it's coming out next year and it's going to be free to play when it does, but you know, with all the buy the in-game currency with real money things going on.
Just quickly, the Battle Royale, because I remember you saying that the Battle Royale's a separate thing.
The Battle Royale's a totally separate thing, and I don't know if I've actually said this before, but you can download the Battle Royale for free separately from the main game right now.
Yeah, no, I've seen it advertised on quite a lot, just like on the PC, like, you know, just browsing and stuff. I know it won't work on my computer, but I have seen it popping up quite a lot. It's just like as advertised specifically as the Battle Royale thing.
Yeah, so you can just get the Battle Royale thing for nothing,
right?
And you should if you can, because who knows, they might actually start charging people for it. But what they've done with the Battle Royale thing is that they've done something sort of similar to what PlayerUnknown's Battlegrounds, because in PlayerUnknown's Battlegrounds you can actually, when you play through the game, you unlock like, you know, cosmetic things for your character, and they've done something similar to that, except what they've done is they've started using the in-game currency, which is called V-Bucks. So you can get V-Bucks in the main game, and then that carries over into the Battle Royale mode, and you can use that to unlock the cosmetic stuff there, because the Battle Royale mode you can't actually get V-Bucks as far as I'm aware. There is now an experience thing in it, and you get daily quests, and some of those daily quests in the Battle Royale mode are things like, you know, outlive 150 people in solo mode, or something like that, which just means that while you're playing the game, 150 people have to die. Even if you don't kill them. But and then there's other things like get pistol kills and, you know, these things, and then they give you experience, and killing people in the game and finishing higher and stuff, and I'm assuming finishing higher gives you more experience. So I'm now like level 7 in the Battle Royale mode. I haven't really played it too much. This update only came out yesterday, I think, actually. And at level 10 it says it's going to unlock a new thing, and I don't know what that thing is. It just says next unlock level 10, so we'll see what that is, but it's all going to be cosmetic stuff, because the whole thing about the Battle Royale mode is that everybody starts with a level playing field. Because it would become pointless if people just automatically had good guns and stuff like that. It would be a complete waste of time.
Well, it's the fact that you can just, like, you can find yourself in the middle of nowhere, near nowhere, and you'd be stuffed from the start of the game, but you can also just find yourself next to a shotgun.
Yeah, well, that's it. One thing I will say is I got my first solo win, finally. Was it last week? Got my first solo win. The only game mode I haven't won in now is the duo, the pairs mode. I've got 6 wins in the squad mode. We've been playing with like a couple of 3 friends, who, well, one of which, Ash, is particularly good at sniping people. So, but that's his thing.
He's generally the way you can let him do that sort of stuff.
Yeah, I'm much better if I'm just like running at people with a shotgun.
So in your solo win, how much time did you spend in toilets?
None, actually, but I did spend a lot of time in a bush. I think no, I was hiding behind trees. Actually, the video's on YouTube.
Alright.
The video's on our YouTube channel. Me getting my solo win, because what I'd done was I decided, right, it was Sunday, actually, it was last Sunday. I was like, right, I'm not doing anything today. I'm going to sit down, I'm going to stream this on the PS4, and I'm going to say, right, I'm going to play this game until I get my first solo win, and I'll be here for the next 5 hours if I need to be, sort of thing. First game, won. And so then I was kind of 25 minutes into a stream, having won the first game, and being like, well, what am I going to do now? So I just kept playing, and then just like, you know, dying all the time. But yeah, it's definitely, I did celebrate quite loudly when I won. So you can go and watch that on our YouTube channel if you want to go and watch. I only killed 2 people. in the entire thing. There's 100 people. I killed one person very, very early in the game, and then I killed the last guy. And the last guy, I didn't even know where he was. I just knew that he'd built a base, and I had a grenade launcher.
So you just twat.
So that was it. I just thought, I'm not sitting here waiting for him to come to me.
Aye.
I'm going for him. And just ran straight at his base and just, boom, just blew it to pieces, and it came up, you've won. So it's
Nice.
like, oh, there we go.
Nice.
So yeah, the Battle Royale mode, like I say, there's a lot it's all just cosmetic stuff, really. But there is also now, sorry, I should have said, there's stats and there's leaderboards. They've added those in so you can see how you rank up. And like I say, I still need to get that duel win, because when you win in different modes, normally when you come into this game, you're in the battle bus, which is like a flying battle bus that you have to jump out and parachute down to the ground. Your parachute is a glider until you win in that mode, and then you get an umbrella, which you float down on. And so the only mode I've not got my umbrella on is the duo mode, and it's really annoying me. I just thought this glider, I'm like, that fucking glider.
That umbrella.
That glider reminded me of how shit I am with one more person. So yeah, Battle Royale, it's still a lot of fun. I'm still just completely obsessed with playing it.
Well, if anyone out there wants to team up with Chris and help him get that umbrella,
Well, people have been trying. It's just, sometimes it's just
Not
a big luck element involved in it.
Aye.
If you parachute into a place and you find absolutely nothing of any use, you're already in trouble in that game. Especially if you're lacking in skill,
well,
like me.
you know how to pull the trigger. That's the main thing.
Well, that's it. Yeah, they have.
And squat.
They have done a couple of things. I think they have sort of fixed a few things with like the accuracy of some of the guns and stuff like that. I've noticed that the assault rifles, I seem to be hitting a lot more with them since that update installed yesterday.
Oh, right.
I think they've changed the way it recoils or something like that. Or somebody explained it to me. I think what they've done is that they've reduced the amount of bullet spray, so the bullets going off in random directions, and instead given the guns recoil.
So you have to account for that.
So you have to account for the recoil instead of just hitting, like aiming and hoping that you hit.
Well, because I was under the impression that like the guns were quite because you've mentioned a few times when talking about like just taking shots at distances with pretty much any weapon, and like actually, I mean, you just happen to get the stray bullet or whatever like that.
Yeah.
But it was just giving me the impression that it's actually quite accurate for them, where you just point and shoot for the most part.
See, the thing is that like sniper rifles work like sniper rifle should.
Yeah.
And you see the bullet drop and stuff like that. It's got all that things in it. They added in a scoped assault rifle, which is almost like a laser. As long as you're aiming at somebody, you don't even see the bullet. It just boom, just hits them as long as you're aiming straight at them. But the normal assault rifles just seem to spray all over the place.
Okay.
Especially if you just held the trigger down. You were much more accurate if you just tapped it.
Yeah.
It seemed, but they've now seemed to have made that much more accurate. But I think that some of the guns were more accurate than others. I think like the pistols were really much more accurate than assault rifles were, to the point where sometimes I would just bin an assault rifle for a pistol. Even though some people would mock me for that, but I'm just like, no, this pistol's so much better and I kill so many more people with
If you
pistols.
feel more comfortable
Yeah,
using
exactly.
it, like that's what I always remember from I don't play a lot of first person. I played a lot of Counter-Strike, and always I remember it was just like I would just muck about and then try and find a gun that I was like, oh, this is good. And quite a lot of times it was pistols. I was like, I'm quite happy with this,
Yeah.
and I'm more comfortable aiming.
Well, see, Ash is a big fan of the pistols.
Aye.
Ash, who's a fan of the sniper rifles and stuff, he's actually a big fan of pistols in this game as well. For the same reasons, he actually thinks they're more accurate.
Yeah.
But anyway, yeah, still having a lot of fun with Battle Royale. I think everybody should pick it up in case it does actually cost money at some point in the future. It's free, go and get it.
Get that free game, folks.
And the other thing, that I have been playing is Shadow of War. So I mentioned this in the last episode that I'd kind of started playing it. Now I've put about 15 hours into it now, and like I say, I've just been kind of like turning it on and jumping in for an hour or two at a time, and that's it. And I've been kind of expecting by that point that I would get to the sort of main feature of this game that makes it different from Shadow of Mordor, which was that you can build up an orc army and go and do raids on fortresses and stuff, and you have to pick your captains and all that. And I haven't got to that point yet. I'm still kind of wondering what point that happens. So it must be much further through the game than I'm expecting, because I'm playing through story quests and things like that. and I've just not really heard much mention of it yet at all. So I don't really know. I mean, it's actually making me think, have I missed something here? Have I missed some sort of like other quest that I've just not noticed somewhere? But I mean, to be fair, I have done the almighty load of fucking about that you kind of do in these games, in these sort of Batman-esque games, which where the actual combat in them is just a lot of fun. Like, you know, going off and fighting like 20 orcs at once. When they're all trying to hit you at once, and you're doing all the blocking and stuff, and all the animations and stuff in the game are just pretty cool. And you unlock all these different abilities, so you can do all this crazy shit at times. You know, like I've got the Shadow Strike thing now, where I'm just aiming my bow at an orc that's 500 yards away and teleporting across the level and slaying them. You know, and yeah, you can just spend a lot of time just enjoying the combat in that game, and picking fights of random captains. I'm sure I mentioned this the last time, but finding the weediest little orc and letting him kill you, just so that he becomes a captain. Just like just having a team of like really shit looking orcs that are captains of all these other orcs, and just for fun. Well, I've got to a point now where I've unlocked that many skills, and there's some new skills in it. There's some skill. A lot of the skills are just the same ones from the old ones with some slight differences. I've unlocked that many skills now that even though I'm playing it on the hardest mode, when I first started playing the game, I died a lot. I died constantly. But now that I've unlocked all these skills and got used to the combat, I'm just never dying at all anymore. And I don't know if that's a problem. Like, I don't know, like, because dare I say it, is that me being good at the game, or is that like, is that just a problem with these kind of games?
It's maybe because you've gone for the more combat-based skill. I mean, I don't know what the other
They're
skills.
Pretty much all combat-based is the thing.
Well, maybe just the ones that you've taken have given you an edge in the combat. Presumably there will be other units, types of soldiers that you'll need to deal with later on.
I'm only just coming up against some of the sort of warlord captains who are much, much tougher. And I think, those are supposed to be much, much more challenging to you, because they all have their own sort of resistances. And like I said the last time, this game goes way more in depth with the sort of orc traits and resistances and all that sort of thing compared to Shadow and Mordor. You really have to get that intel and figure out what's going on with some of these orcs, otherwise you may not beat them unless you get lucky. I was actually reading something the other day, or something online, I can't remember which website it was, it may have been Kotaku or something like that, but there was somebody had asked the readers to write in with their biggest dick orc bosses, like the ones that they just couldn't beat, and like the stories they had to tell, and some of the stories were hilarious. It has to do with like how many times that this orc boss has killed them, and there's some of the orc bosses in them that do a sort of shaming thing. So you get this animation when you're about to die. You get like an orc will come up to you when you've run out of health, and you'll get a sort of like a QTE thing where you've just basically got to press a button to defend against it. When some of these orc bosses come up to you and try and do this thing to you, they will sometimes just go nah, and they'll just walk away. And they'll just say, you're not worth my time,
That's quite cool.
And they just shame you, like they make you feel bad, and there's just like some of the stories that I was reading with some of these guys are just like people just getting properly enraged by these orcs because they would just refuse to kill them. But they're constantly putting them down.
Oh, nice.
I am enjoying the game, much more so. There is that whole thing with the currency and the spending money that it was getting a whole lot of flack for. So far, I have not seen anywhere where that's been necessary. Like, I've never at any point felt like, oh, I may have to spend some money to be good at this game. Like, I don't understand why people are getting worked up about it.
Like that in this game.
I mean, I'm totally against the idea of it.
Oh, they're stupid things to be putting in, but like as long as they're ignored.
Yeah, I mean, then the thing is, you can just ignore it because I'd rather just play through the game and like you get loot for killing captains. There is an in-game currency thing that you do constantly accumulate through killing captains, through doing missions and all these things. Which you can then spend on loot boxes, which aren't anywhere near as good, containers anywhere near as good stuff as the ones that you can pay for.
Right.
But the option's still there to have them, and you don't have to do it. The one thing I'm worried about is that you do get orc captains in some of these boxes, and I think that you have to use them to make your armies up when it comes to the raid
Plus,
parts.
there's better orc captains you can maybe...
And somebody was telling me, whether this is true or not, like, don't quote me on this, but somebody was telling me that there are people out there that have paid money for these boxes to get their orc captains, like really, really good orc captains. And there is an online mode on this where you can fight your army against somebody else's army, alright? And these people's captains have been getting killed, and they die permanently. So somebody has paid money for a digital orc captain who has died, and they don't get them back. Again, whether that's true or not, don't quote me on it.
I hope it's true.
I hope it's true. Go and do your own research on this one. But yeah,
if you're the kind of loser who goes on to a game and has to pay for something extra to compete at the game, then you deserve everything bad that happens to you. You are a total loser.
This is what I was saying to the guy. So it's almost like the developers of the game have said, let's put this thing in to get them to spend money, but make them feel shit about it.
Like, shame
make them realise that this is a bad idea.
It could be industry breaking. Maybe it will filter through.
Too many people spend money on something like this for industry to break.
Well, you ask. I mean, have you ever met anybody that said that? You probably, but it's like a numbers game where you put that out there, and you only need a couple of idiots, a couple of losers to go and use them, and you're making your money out of it. You've had to do very little work to put that in place in the first place. All you've had to do is chop up the game a bit.
I can say that this very concept pretty much killed Mass Effect, because the newest Mass Effect has obviously not really had stellar reviews, and I've not even completed the game because I was just disappointed by a single campaign. It was just released, so that there is the multiplayer there. Now, Mass Effect 3 had excellent first player campaign. It was all about it, but it also had a multiplayer which was actually really good. And I've enjoyed it. This is the only multiplayer I played a lot. And as you play it, you obviously unlock whatever random loot chests, and in them all sorts of content. And it was great. I was having a lot of fun. But I just saw an article a few days ago where somebody that used to work for the developer, in that article they pretty much said that there were people spending tens of thousands of dollars on those loot crates. A single person spending tens of thousands.
For Mass Effect 3?
Yeah.
And so obviously that's not carried over into...
No. But my point is, if there are people like this, and he's just quoted one example, but there's going to be a lot of people spending lots and lots of money on, in this particular case, loot crates, but, in games like this, just additional multiplayer content that speeds up your whatever character or equipment or whatever else you might be getting, or captains, just either speeds it up or something like this. That's what really makes developers happy, which means future games will be focusing on stuff like this, because it's a good way for others to earn money. Capitalism is killing games.
It's killing most things. Right?
but also games.
Capitalism is killing capitalism.
Hopefully.
Kind of is strangling itself.
Yeah, we always end up on the subject of capitalism. So.
Well, it's because we've got like a bona fide commie in the room, it's interesting.
Yes.
Born and raised, mate. Born and raised.
Yeah, I was born in a cloaca.
Oh, good. Very good, Pavel. That's a Polish word I understand because of board games. So yeah, let's see. I am enjoying Shadow of War. I'm not going to pay any money for any of that stuff.
But that stuff's not
make me.
affecting your game.
And it's not affecting my game so far. If I get to a point where I feel like I'm going to have to spend money to do anything else with this game, the game's just getting deleted. It's that simple.
Fair enough.
I think the very concept of pay to win only really revolves around multiplayer, yeah? Because in single player, if you have to spend money on something, I don't see why you'd have to. There's not going to be any player around you that's better than you. So you take your time and play the game the way you like it.
Well, I suppose, I mean, if in that instance, I guess I don't have so much of a problem with it. If it doesn't affect your single player experience and the company can make a bit of extra money by rinsing idiots, then why not?
Okay, right, let's move on. So
you got anything else for us?
I've got one more thing. I have been playing. Well, I have played. I played one session. I streamed it. My PC was having a bit of a fit at the time, so the first half of the video was a bit like laggy as hell. But the second half's fine. And this is Cuphead, which has been kind of like advertised as the Dark Souls of platformers and running gun games and stuff like that.
Yeah, it's really
it's such a weird game. I've only played like a couple hours of it, like I say, but I mean I had a lot of fun with it. But it was, I can see where people were coming from. So like you say, yeah, it's like a sort of run and gun thing. But it's got like very early cartoons aesthetic to it.
Like early Disney, yeah?
Really early, like we're talking 1930s stuff here.
And it's a platformer, isn't it?
And it's a platformer which has like, a lot of just run along and shoot things. It looks, I mean, it's the looks that are really the thing that stand out for me, because they've put so much work into making it look like one of these early cartoons, and it's so well researched and stuff that it's actually just, it's an amazing looking game. And it's such a simple idea as well. I'm sitting there thinking, why hasn't anybody done something like this before? And they probably have. It's just that it's just that they had to make something ridiculously hard for it to stand out. Now Cuphead's a really sort of cute looking character. He has a cup for a head, and he does have a friend called Mugman, because you can play this game co-op. I haven't tried it yet. I think that would probably enhance the game for me. I think playing it in the single player mode was just kind of frustrating at times, but still fun. Now, one of the things I will say is that the level design in this, there's been a lot of devious thought being put into the level design. Like, the people who made these levels knew exactly the sort of mistakes that platform players will make when they're trying to I'm going to jump over this thing. They will deliberately put something in exactly the spot that most people will land in to make it fucking impossible for you to get past this thing without some nifty little trick.
Right.
Now, Cuphead's, I mean, like I say, you're basically running through levels, and Cuphead just kind of it's like he's clicking his fingers really, really fast to shoot these just little projectiles out. And one of the cool things is that you can go to a sort of shop thing and change the projectiles that you're shooting. So I ended up playing through the vast majority of the 2 hours that I played with a boomerang style projectile, so I was actually pointing behind me every time I was shooting. So I was pointing in the wrong direction, and then it was coming back. And I was finding the reason that I did that was because when I was getting into the boss fights, that was just a much easier way of dealing with it. It was just the fact of just facing the wrong direction, because then you could jump away from the boss. Right. And still be shooting at it. Right. So, I thought that was just that was a pretty cool thing that they did with that. And apparently, the further that the boomerang projectile travels, the more damage it does. So, yeah, just constantly jumping away from bosses. I had a lot of fun with it, like I say. I mean, it's a hard thing for me to describe. I would say just go and look at some screenshots or some videos of this if you want to.
I've seen a good bit of the distinctive look, yeah.
Yeah, and it's cool, but it's all kind of split into little levels. There's a little sort of overworld map thing that you can just go between, and you can do different levels, and some of them are running gun, and some of them are just boss fights. And it seems that bosses each have 3 stages, and it's I can see where the Dark Souls comparison comes in, because you really have to learn what the bosses do to you before you can beat them. So there's one boss that basically is like a tombstone. He turns into a tombstone thing, which then goes in, runs about the back of the level and then tries to flatten you forward. But you've got to really learn about the timing when he does all these things. There's another one that was basically he turned into it was 2 guys that turned into a big sort of till thing, like a cash register. Or it was it was like a slot machine with a sort of cash register till thing at the bottom almost, and you had to sort of run up and pull the lever, but it would turn into random things and stuff depending on what it span into. But the whole time you were getting fucked up on by all sorts of things. You're just kind of it's one of these things where you're having to do all these sort of perfectly timed jumps and all these. And like I say, frustrating but really rewarding at the same time. Like that Dark Souls feeling is, the most frustrating fucking feeling that you can have. But when you finally get past that one thing that's been really annoying you, it's orgasm level feeling that you get.
That's what Chris gets out of games.
Yeah, because constantly orgasming. But it's like I say, I've only played a couple of hours of it, so I'm not going to go any further into the details of Cuphead, because there could be a lot more that I'm missing out on here. But I would love to try the co-op mode on it. It looks amazing. The gameplay is hard but rewarding, and overall it's just a breath of fresh air, I think, to play a platform game like that. So yeah, I would recommend Cuphead for anybody that wants a challenge.
Excellent. Well, that brings us to the end of the episode, I believe. I'm having a notepad passed over to me.
Just to make sure.
This is going to be, we're going to get this right. So,
about to collapse.
yeah, it's not sounding too great with it. So we'll give out some contact information across the internet and whatnot. So our email is firstplayertoken@gmail.com. We are found on Facebook, SoundCloud, Twitter, iTunes, YouTube. All First Player Token. FIRST. Apart from Twitter, which is 1ST, which is Once Player Token. I won't leave it up to someone else. I'll have to do that bit as well.
I was ready to do it just in
case.
Right,
okay.
Yeah.
So
I thought I'm doing the Euan bit today. So.
We have a website. Don't know why we bother mentioning it every week, but it's but it exists. You can come and see it if you want. It's
firstplayertoken.com.
Firstplayertoken.com. Great. Discord. If you want to come on and do a bit of chatting, get in touch with Chris for some of his streaming. It's discord.me/firstplayertoken. Twitch, check out Chris.
Yep.
I'm sure he's got some streaming coming up soon.
Yep, so like I say, I've been streaming a few things lately. I've been trying to get back into just doing some variety stuff because I had just been playing a lot of Starbound and retro SNES games, and I felt like I needed to switch it up a bit, so I've been playing a few things. But yeah, if you want to find me, it's Unnecessary Chris on Twitch.
Cool, check him out. And we are also part of the Podnose Network, the UK's leading entertainment podcast network.
Any news, Euan?
Much the same. Still just plugging away with the podcasts. Still up roughly about 30 different podcasts on there now. So a nice family that we're a part of, a variety of different topics. So give them a listen and check out the website. And that's us, I think. So, yeah, what did we say at this point?
Well, I usually say this until next time.
Oh, do you? Right.
That's the standard way to finish a podcast.
Alright, until next time. I never have a greeting for people. I just say bye.
Bye!
Bye!